There comes a moment when your entire life seems to slow down. Not because you want it to, but because the noise inside you finally collapses. It's not a dramatic moment, not the kind movies would glorify. It usually happens on a quiet night, when your phone feels heavier than usual, and you can't distract yourself with another scroll, another goal, another prayer. You stare at the ceiling and realize something inside you isn't moving anymore. You've been doing everything right. You've read the books, repeated the affirmations, made the vision boards. You've worked hard, stayed positive, tried to manifest alignment through effort. And yet, nothing shifts. The same emptiness hums beneath every success. The same anxiety rises even in peace. You look at the sky and whisper, "Why isn't it working?" But here's the paradox Jung understood before any algorithm could tell you how to fix yourself. The psyche does not respond to control. It responds to surrender. The universe doesn't move when you tighten your grip. It moves when you loosen it. Carl Jung once wrote, "What you resist not only persists, but grows." And in that one line lies the quiet death of everything you thought self-improvement meant. You've been affirming your future with words, but your energy has been whispering something else. I'm scared. I'm not enough. I don't have it. And life, being the mirror it always is, responds not to your affirmations, but to your frequency. You see, the unconscious listens more carefully than you ever will. It doesn't obey your thoughts. It echoes your state. When you chase what you want, you send a signal of lack. And when that signal dominates your being, you don't attract what you desire. You attract what you are. The constant chasing. Society taught you that success is pursuit, that happiness is a prize for those who never rest, that if you grind hard enough, you can bend life to your will. But Jung didn't teach us to chase, he taught us to inquire. Why am I chasing this in the first place? Most people never stop to ask that. They think their hunger is ambition. But what if the thing you want is just a bandage over a deeper wound? When you crave love, is it really love you want, or the end of loneliness you've carried since childhood? When you chase wealth, is it money you seek, or safety, or proof that you finally matter? Jung's genius wasn't motivational, it was confrontational. He knew that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So while you think you're pursuing freedom, you might be running from the fear that you'll never be enough. And while you think you're building success, you might be hiding from the guilt of not living up to someone else's expectations. Everything you chase outside yourself is a reflection of something unresolved within. That's why you can reach every milestone and still feel like something's missing. Because it's not your goals that are broken. It's your reasons for having them. The truth about survival mode. There's nothing wrong with ambition, but when ambition is fueled by fear, it becomes survival. And survival is the opposite of creation. When your nervous system is locked in, not enough, your mind can't create, it can only defend. You overthink, you overwork, you overcompensate, because deep down, you still believe that peace must be earned. But the soul doesn't operate on transaction. It operates on truth. It doesn't want you to prove your worth. It wants you to remember it. That's the difference between manifesting from ego and magnetizing from alignment. Ego says, if I get there, I'll finally feel safe. The self whispers, when I feel safe, I'll naturally get there. Jung saw this clearly. The outer world bends to the inner state. Reality doesn't rearrange itself to match your plans. It mirrors your level of consciousness. So if you're still living from fear, you'll keep attracting lessons disguised as delays. If you're still running from silence, you'll keep meeting chaos that forces you to pause. And if you're still begging for love, you'll keep finding people who confirm that you don't have it. The universe isn't cruel, it's corrective. It keeps sending you mirrors until you finally look in one. The beginning of surrender. What if you stopped trying to control the outcome and started listening to what the discomfort is teaching you? What if you realized that surrender isn't giving up, it's giving in to truth? There's a difference between quitting and surrendering. Quitting says, I'm done because I can't win. Surrender says, I'm done pretending I have to fight. When the doing stops, the becoming begins. When the noise dies down, the unconscious awakens. When you finally stop interfering, your psyche begins to heal itself. This is not the end of your effort. It's the beginning of your cooperation with something deeper, something timeless. And maybe that's what all the breakdowns were trying to tell you, that the life you were fighting to fix was never meant to be fixed. It was meant to be felt, experienced, understood. When you let go, you don't lose control, you regain connection. And the moment you stop chasing, life starts catching up. The journey begins here, not in doing more, but in being present enough to see that you never had to. So take a breath. Let the tension fall from your shoulders. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are simply being called to stop trying to become and start remembering who you already are. Most people don't realize that control is the most seductive addiction of all. You don't drink it or smoke it. You think it. Every what if, every I should, every maybe if I just tried harder is another hit of the illusion that you can make life obey. But Carl Jung once wrote that neurosis often begins when the conscious mind tries to control what belongs to the unconscious. And that's exactly what most of us do. We don't trust the process, so we try to dominate it. We call it discipline, focus, or manifestation, but it's really anxiety dressed up as ambition. We pray for alignment, then panic when it doesn't come fast enough. We meditate to calm the mind, but secretly hope that the calm will make miracles appear faster. We say we're surrendering, but we're really negotiating. The ego wants progress it can measure. The soul only wants presence. And until those two learn to work together, your efforts will always feel like swimming against a current that refuses to stop. The cost of constant doing. If your worth depends on what you produce, you'll never rest, because the unconscious equates stillness with danger. This is the hidden programming of the modern psyche, to always fix, to always optimize, to always do. But every time you rush to solve a problem before you felt it, you rob yourself of the wisdom it was trying to give. True growth doesn't happen when you add more. It begins when you start subtracting. When you take away what's false, what's forced, and what's been clogging the quiet channel between you and truth. You can't pour light into a cup that's already overflowing with noise. Sometimes life has to empty you out, not as punishment, but as preparation. That's why things fall apart right before they fall together. That's why you lose what no longer fits your frequency. And that's why surrender feels like collapse, because your nervous system has confused safety with suffering. When you finally let go, you're not losing control. You're losing the illusion of control. And that's the only kind worth losing. What detachment really means, detachment isn't apathy. It's clarity. It's not saying, I don't care. It's saying, I care, but I'm not enslaved. It's the space between effort and obsession, the sacred pause where consciousness breathes again. Jung believed that freedom begins not with external change, but with inner observation, the ability to notice the emotion without becoming it. That is detachment. To feel sadness without drowning in it, to feel anger without acting it out, to feel love without clinging to its source. It's the art of holding your experience gently, like sunlight passing through an open hand. Never trying to trap it, only to witness it. Modern neuroscience echoes this ancient truth. When you observe a feeling instead of reacting, the amygdala, your emotional alarm, begins to quiet. Your prefrontal cortex, the part that reasons, reactivates. Observation literally rewires the brain toward peace. You don't have to kill the ego. You only need to witness it without obeying. And in that witnessing, you realize that detachment is not the absence of desire. It's the absence of dependency. When nothing happens, after the release comes silence. The emails stop. The phone doesn't ring. The world looks the same but feels slightly hollow. You wonder if letting go was a mistake, if surrendering means you've failed. But this silence, this strange nothingness, is sacred. It's the void between identities, the womb between who you were and who you are becoming. Jung called it the creative void, a phase of psychic reorganization where chaos conceals order. When nothing seems to be happening on the outside, everything is being rearranged on the inside. Your unconscious is cleaning house. Your nervous system is recalibrating. Your old patterns are being rewritten at the speed of awareness. But because it's invisible, the ego panics. It whispers, "See? It's not working. You're wasting time." And that's the test. If you believe that voice, you'll start chasing again and undo everything that silence was building for you. The void is not a punishment, it's purification. It strips away your addiction to outcomes until you remember that peace is not a prize. It's your baseline. So if you're there right now, in that quiet, uncertain space, hold your ground. Breathe. You are not being ignored. You are being rebuilt. The paradox of awakening. Awakening rarely feels like awakening. It feels like falling apart, like losing faith, losing control, losing your old reflection in the mirror. But that's because awakening isn't about becoming new. It's about remembering what's ancient inside you. The part of you that existed before fear, before striving, before conditioning. The deeper you fall into yourself, the lighter the world becomes. Because when you stop fighting the current, you finally learn how to float. You realize that surrender isn't the end of your power. It's the beginning of your participation in a larger rhythm. You stop forcing synchronicity and start living in sync. And in that subtle shift, life bends to meet you. Not because you demanded it, but because you finally matched its flow. The moment of trust. One day, you'll wake up and realize that nothing external has changed, but you feel different. You're no longer chasing the text, the promotion, the proof. You're simply breathing. That's the moment your frequency changes. That's when the universe starts responding differently, not because it finally heard you, but because it finally recognized you. You've stopped broadcasting fear and started transmitting truth. And when your energy says, "I am already it," life echoes back, "You're right." So let yourself fall into that stillness. It's not the end of your story, it's the rewriting of it. Every ending is a beginning that learned how to breathe. You're not losing control, you're gaining consciousness. And that's what real transformation sounds like. There's a strange thing that happens when you finally stop chasing. The things you were running from start to catch up. The emotions you buried, the fears you labeled weak, the versions of yourself you swore were gone. They all begin to resurface. And it's tempting to think you're regressing, but you're not. You're remembering. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the part of the psyche that holds everything you've exiled in order to survive. It's not evil. It's not darkness in the Hollywood sense. It's simply the unacknowledged truth of who you are. Every piece of anger you've silenced, every desire you've shamed, every instinct you've rationalized away. They're all still here, not to destroy you, but to be integrated. Because the truth is, what you reject doesn't disappear. It becomes your life. The unconscious contract. Think about it. Every time you suppress a feeling, you make an unconscious agreement. You tell your psyche, if I don't feel this, maybe I'll be loved. If I hide this, maybe I'll be safe. And so, you divide yourself into acceptable and forbidden halves. The light becomes your mask, the shadow becomes your silence. But the psyche was never designed for war with itself. Every denial creates a dissonance, and that dissonance manifests in your relationships, your career, your health, your dreams. You attract partners who mirror your wounds. You manifest situations that replay your old stories. And you call it bad luck, when it's really unintegrated energy trying to become conscious. The shadow is not your enemy. It's your unhealed ally. The part of you that's been screaming for inclusion. The mythic mirror. Mythology has always known this. In every hero's journey, The descent into darkness is unavoidable. Odysseus must enter the underworld. Buddha must face Mara beneath the tree. Luke Skywalker must confront Darth Vader, his own reflection in shadow form. The battle is never about defeating darkness. It's about seeing it clearly enough to transform it. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That is the real work, not chasing light, but turning toward the dark with eyes open. When you do that, you discover something extraordinary. The shadow is not trying to destroy you, it's trying to complete you. The parts you've condemned are the very keys to your wholeness. Your anger hides your boundaries. Your jealousy hides your unclaimed desire. Your fear hides your intuition, and your pain hides your power. Integration means taking back these parts and allowing them to live under the same roof as your light. The science of integration. Modern psychology calls this self-regulation. When you stop repressing emotions, your nervous system stabilizes. The prefrontal cortex reconnects with the amygdala, and you stop living in constant fight or flight. You start to breathe differently, not the shallow, guarded breath of survival, but the deep, rhythmic breath of belonging. Mindfulness research from Stanford's Mind and Body Lab confirms what Jung knew decades ago. Naming a feeling reduces its charge by nearly half. Awareness itself is alchemy. That's why journaling, therapy, or honest reflection works. Because once something is seen, it no longer has to shout. What you make conscious, you neutralize. What you accept, you integrate. What you integrate, you transcend. Meeting yourself again. Imagine sitting in a dark room and lighting one candle. The darkness doesn't vanish, but it's no longer frightening. That candle is awareness, and every time you choose to feel rather than flee, to observe rather than overthink, you light another flame. Eventually, the room doesn't change. You do. You realize the goal isn't to become light. It's to become whole. A being who can hold both sunlight and storm, grace and grief, without collapsing into either. That's what Jung called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, not who the world told you to be. Individuation isn't an achievement. It's a reunion, a homecoming of all the selves you've abandoned on the way to being good. The inner reconciliation. So what does this look like in daily life? It looks like forgiving yourself for the years you lived half asleep. It looks like recognizing that anger isn't failure, it's feedback. It looks like letting tears fall without labeling them weakness. It looks like resting without guilt. Integration doesn't make you invincible, it makes you real. And reality, once embraced, is the most powerful frequency in existence. Because when you stop splitting yourself into fragments, you stop needing life to fix you. You stop using people as bandages. You stop chasing healing and start embodying health. The unconscious no longer has to sabotage your peace to get your attention. It can finally exhale. Wholeness over perfection. Jung warned that striving for perfection is a subtle form of violence against the self. Perfection divides. Wholeness unites. Perfection says, "I'll love myself when I have no flaws." Wholeness says, "I love myself through them." Perfection fears judgment. Wholeness welcomes honesty. Perfection hides in the light. Wholeness shines through the cracks. When you stop trying to become perfect, you make space for something far greater. Integration. Because only when you accept the totality of who you are can you embody the totality of life itself. And that's when the world changes around you, not because you've mastered it, but because you've stopped fighting your reflection in it. The shadow was never a curse. It was the mirror you avoided, and the moment you finally looked, you didn't find a monster. You found yourself. When you finally integrate the shadow, life doesn't explode into fireworks. It unfolds quietly, like dawn after years of artificial light. No angels sing, no sudden miracle announces itself. Only peace, soft and patient, begins to hum beneath everything you do. You start noticing the ordinary, the sound of rain against a window, the way your breath moves without effort, the texture of silence when you're not afraid of it anymore. This is what awakening looks like, not ecstatic, but intimate. It's not about escaping the human experience. It's about inhabiting it fully. You realize that enlightenment was never a destination. It was your natural state beneath the noise. The return from the underworld. Every hero must return from the underworld, and every soul must return from its own descent. The mythic descent into pain, confusion, and shadow was never the end of your story. It was the middle chapter, the initiation that taught you how to see with both eyes open, one in light, one in dark. And now, with that new vision, you walk back into life, not as the same person who began the journey, but as someone more human, and because of that, more divine. You still feel fear, but it no longer rules you. You still experience doubt, but it no longer defines you. You carry both heaven and hell within your chest, and for the first time, they are not enemies. That's integration. That's balance. That's freedom. The world as a mirror. As consciousness stabilizes, the outer world begins to mirror your inner harmony. You notice that people treat you differently, not because they've changed, but because your energy no longer invites the same patterns. The conversations you attract are different. The opportunities, quieter, but truer. Even conflict feels sacred now, a chance to practice awareness instead of react from pain. The universe has always been a mirror. It only ever reflected your frequency back to you. Now that you vibrate from peace, life starts to echo that same peace everywhere. This doesn't mean challenges disappear. It means you stop meeting them with resistance. You no longer fight for control. You collaborate with existence. And that collaboration feels like grace. The power of allowing. Modern neuroscience calls this coherence, when your thoughts, emotions, and actions finally operate in harmony. It's when your nervous system stops bracing for attack and your heart rate synchronizes with your breath. You begin to live in flow, not by forcing it, but by trusting it. Carl Jung called this participation mystique, the moment when the boundary between self and life dissolves and you realize you were never separate from the rhythm of the whole. In this state, manifestation isn't effort, it's resonance. You don't need to chase. You simply align, and what's meant for you arrives, not as a reward, but as a reflection of who you've become. This is not passive surrender. It's conscious cooperation. It's not laziness. It's leadership at the level of the soul. You've stopped trying to force outcomes because you finally understand that everything unfolds on time, and that time is not a line, but a pattern, and that pattern always loops back to love. The rebirth of self. Every transformation ends with a rebirth, not into a different person, but into the truest version of yourself. You no longer measure your worth in achievements or approval. You measure it in presence, in how deeply you can meet this moment without needing to escape it. This is what Jung meant when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." The privilege, not the punishment. Because becoming yourself isn't about adding, it's about remembering. You begin to see that you were never missing anything. You just forgot to notice what was already whole. You don't need more healing. You need more honesty. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be complete. And completeness doesn't come from fixing your life. It comes from loving it. The stillness after the storm. Eventually, you reach a day where nothing dramatic happens, and yet it feels like everything has changed. You wake up. The light touches your face. You make coffee. You feel the ground beneath your feet. And for the first time you realize you're not waiting anymore. You're not waiting for the text, the sign, the result, the miracle. You're just here, breathing, aware, alive. That's the end of searching and the beginning of seeing. It's the kind of peace that doesn't shout. It hums, quietly, through every cell. It says, "You've returned." The new compass. When you live from wholeness, decisions become simple. Not easy, but simple. You no longer ask, will this make me happy? You ask, does this align with who I am? You don't seek permission, because authenticity itself becomes your permission. You don't fear uncertainty, because your compass isn't certainty, it's truth. Truth doesn't always comfort, but it always clarifies. And clarity is liberation. Living from depth. Now, your life becomes a quiet prayer, not of words, but of awareness. Every action carries intention. Every silence carries meaning. Every relationship becomes a mirror, not to validate you, but to expand you. You no longer try to find yourself. You found peace in being yourself. And that is the real revolution. Because in a world addicted to noise, stillness is rebellion. And in a culture obsessed with more, presence is power. Howlam, or the closing moment. Maybe this is how rebirth truly happens, not in fireworks, but in the gentle realization that you don't need to chase the light, because you are the light that keeps finding its way home. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are not behind. You are unfolding exactly as you must. Every loss softened you. Every silence prepared you. Every breakdown shaped you. And now, as you breathe into this moment, you understand the deepest truth of Jung's work. You were never meant to escape the darkness. You were meant to illuminate it. So breathe and begin again, not as someone new, but as someone finally whole. Most of us spend our entire lives chasing love, chasing peace, chasing purpose. We call it growth, progress, ambition. But somewhere along the line, we mistake motion for meaning. We think the next achievement will save us. The next relationship will heal us. The next version of ourselves will finally be enough. But the truth, the one Carl Jung tried to show us, is that you were never missing anything to begin with. What you call manifestation is often just a search for the pieces of yourself you abandoned long ago. The forgotten blueprint. You were born whole, before the conditioning, before the fear, before you were told what to want, who to be, how to act. You were already complete. But somewhere along the way, you began to forget. You learned that love must be earned, that peace must be proven, that belonging must be bought. And so piece by piece, you traded your truth for approval. You hid your authenticity behind 1,000 masks. You started performing for the world and slowly stopped listening to your soul. That's when the disconnection began. The quiet ache that whispers, something's missing. But nothing was ever missing. You just lost the signal beneath the static. The static of the ego. Every overthought moment, every anxious spiral, every sleepless night is the ego trying to remember how to feel safe in a world that rewards pretending. You chase outcomes because somewhere deep inside, a part of you still believes you have to earn existence. But that belief isn't truth. It's trauma. It's the residue of survival. It's the nervous system saying, if I keep doing, maybe I'll stay loved. You don't need to silence that voice. You need to listen to it. Because the moment you hear it clearly, you realize it's not your enemy. It's your younger self, still waiting for you to say, you're safe now. You can stop running. That's the moment the healing begins. The great remembering. You've been taught to manifest by asking for more. But Jung would tell you, stop asking and start remembering. You're not manifesting peace. You're remembering what peace feels like when you stop interrupting it. You're not manifesting love. You're remembering what love feels like when it's not conditional. You're not manifesting abundance. You're remembering the truth that everything you need was already coded into your being before you ever tried to earn it. This is the great remembering, not the pursuit of something new, but the unveiling of what was always there. Like a sculptor removing marble, you don't create the statue. You simply uncover what was hidden inside all along. The body remembers first. Healing doesn't begin in the mind, it begins in the body. The body is the unconscious made visible. Every breath, every muscle, every heartbeat is a language of memory and meaning. When you slow down enough to feel it, you start to hear the messages it's been carrying for years. Tightness in the chest says, "I'm protecting." Tension in the jaw says, "I was never allowed to speak." Fatigue says, "I've been fighting too long." You don't need to fight these sensations. You need to witness them, gently, patiently. Because the body doesn't need fixing. It needs permission to trust again. When the body relaxes, the mind follows. When the mind softens, the heart reopens. And when the heart reopens, your entire life begins to change, not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped resisting it. Becoming the stillness. At this point in the journey, you no longer seek stillness, you become it. The storms still come, but you no longer mistake them for punishment. You see them as weather, passing, purposeful. Stillness isn't the absence of chaos, it's the presence of awareness within it. You start realizing that peace isn't something you visit, it's something you live from. It's the quiet confidence that says, even if nothing changes, I'm still okay. This is not resignation, it's realization. When you move from that space, you attract experiences that match your authenticity. Because now your energy says, I already have everything I need. And life, the eternal mirror, replies, you're right. The mirror moment. Some people will call this coincidence. Others will call it alignment. But you'll know it as truth. Every song that finds you, every line in a book that stops you mid-page, every person who appears at the exact right time, they're not random. They're reminders. Reminders that life isn't happening to you, it's happening through you. You are not separate from the rhythm of existence. You are that rhythm. And when you stop chasing synchronicities, they start chasing you. Because alignment doesn't respond to effort, it responds to embodiment. You don't have to prove your worth to the universe. You only have to remember that you were never unworthy to begin with. The return home. Eventually you stop waiting for signs. You stop asking, when will it happen? And you start realizing, it already is. You stop seeing awakening as a moment. You start living it as a movement, breath by breath, day by day. You understand now that you were never here to manifest the perfect life. You were here to remember the perfect awareness that could hold any life, joy or pain, love or loss, without losing itself. You realize that you are not the seeker. You are the space in which seeking happens. And in that recognition, a quiet smile finds its way to your lips, because for the first time, you are home. Closing reflection. So maybe this isn't the end. Maybe it's the remembering of every beginning. Maybe all along, your soul wasn't asking you to become more. It was asking you to become real. Real enough to feel, real enough to forgive, real enough to let life move through you without resistance. Because once you stop trying to control life, life starts dancing with you. And that's the dance Jung was pointing to, the union of opposites, the marriage of soul and world, the consciousness that doesn't divide, but includes. So if you've made it this far, breathe. Let these words settle into your nervous system. Let this truth echo softly in your heart. You are not manifesting. You are remembering. And the moment you remember, everything returns. Welcome home. There's a stillness that follows deep transformation. A quiet so complete that it almost feels unfamiliar. No more questions echoing through the mind. No more frantic searching for meaning. Just breath, awareness, and the gentle hum of being alive. If you listen closely enough, you'll notice it's not silence at all. It's peace. And peace has a sound. A rhythm that pulses beneath every moment, a heartbeat shared between you and the universe. This is the space you've been running from and toward all along. The stillness beneath every storm, the calm beneath every collapse. The cycle completes. Jung often wrote that life is not a straight line but a spiral, a pattern that revisits the same themes, each time with deeper awareness. You might feel like you're repeating old lessons, but look closer. You're not back at the start. You're standing in the same place, but on a higher floor of understanding. The pain that once broke you now instructs you. The confusion that once suffocated you now humbles you. You're not escaping your old patterns, you're integrating them into wisdom. This is what individuation really means. Not perfection, not transcendence, but conscious participation in your own evolution. It's not about avoiding the cycle, it's about dancing with it. The humanness of healing. Maybe that's the part most people forget. That awakening doesn't erase your humanity, it deepens it. You'll still feel fear, but now you meet it with tenderness. You'll still get triggered, but now you pause instead of react. You'll still stumble, but now you see beauty in the imperfection of the fall. Every scar you carry is proof that you were willing to feel, and every feeling you allow becomes a thread in the tapestry of your authenticity. You don't need to be more spiritual. You just need to be more sincere. Because real spirituality isn't an escape, it's embodiment. It's the willingness to live deeply, to stay open, to say yes even when your voice trembles. What remains when everything unnecessary has fallen away? The striving, the proving, the masks. What remains is astonishingly simple. Presence. The presence to feel sunlight on your skin without needing a reason. The presence to listen to another person without preparing your reply. The presence to stand in uncertainty without collapsing into fear. Presence is the real wealth of consciousness. And when you have it, you stop bargaining with life. You stop asking, when will it happen? And start realizing, it's happening right now. You stop rushing to become and start remembering that you already are. 1. If you ever find yourself lost again, and you will, because that's how growth works, don't look for the map. Maps belong to other people. Look for your compass. Your compass is the quiet sense inside that says, this feels true. Even if it's uncomfortable. Even if it doesn't make sense yet. Follow that truth. It will never lead you astray. Peace is the compass. When you choose peace, not comfort, not avoidance, but genuine, grounded peace, you align with your deepest intelligence. That peace is not passive. It's power in stillness. It's awareness in motion. It's the strength to walk slowly while the world demands you run. The collective mirror. When one person becomes conscious, the entire field shifts. Every time you integrate your shadow, you make it easier for others to face theirs. Every time you choose awareness over reaction, you make consciousness more contagious. The healing you do for yourself ripples outward in ways you'll never fully see. That's how the collective unconscious evolves, not through grand revolutions, but through quiet revolutions of the heart. You're part of something ancient, a lineage of souls learning to wake up together. So if you ever doubt your progress, remember, every act of honesty, every pause before reacting, every moment you return to breath is world work, soul work, Jungian work. The last mirror. Maybe that's why this message found you, not by accident, but by resonance. Something in you recognized itself here. Something in you remembered. Jung once said, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life." Perhaps this video, these words, were one of those disguises, a mirror moment, a checkpoint for your soul. So if even one sentence cracked open something inside you, don't scroll past it. Don't let it dissolve into your feed like noise. Pause, anchor it. Whisper to yourself, "I'm ready. I remember." The invitation. If you're done with surface-level motivation and ready to explore depth, real depth, Stay. Because this isn't a channel, it's a journey. A living conversation between psyche and soul. A place for those who want to turn inward, face their shadows, and become whole. Subscribe not for information, but for transformation. Share this with someone who's chasing everything except themselves. Together, we remember. The final breath, before you go, breathe once more. Not to calm down, but to arrive. You are not late. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are here, and here is enough. So stop manifesting, start remembering, and let the remembering carry you home. There's a moment at the end of every great journey when words fall away. The lesson is no longer something you understand, it's something you embody. You begin to live it without realizing you are living it. You begin to speak it without needing to explain. It moves through you like a quiet current, a silent confidence that doesn't need proof. That's when you know the transformation is complete. Not because life got easier, but because you finally stopped running from its depth. If you do, the light was never gone. You might look back on the darkness and wonder, how could I have been so lost? But here's the truth. You were never lost. The light didn't disappear. It simply waited for your eyes to adjust. The pain you thought would destroy you was the very thing that taught you how to see. When Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. He wasn't warning you. He was inviting you to stop chasing light and start discovering the glow that was already within you. Every breakdown you survived was a secret initiation into your own wholeness. Every ending that shattered you was an opening disguised as loss. Every silence that terrified you was life teaching you how to listen. You were never falling apart. You were falling inward. The eternal return. Now that you've walked through the shadow and into awareness, you begin to understand what Jung meant by the eternal return. Healing is not linear, it's cyclical. You will meet your fears again, but each time you will bow instead of battle. You will revisit your wounds, but this time you will bring wisdom with you. And you'll notice something miraculous. The same pain that once made you collapse now makes you compassionate. That's how consciousness evolves, not by avoiding the darkness, but by carrying light into it. This is the quiet revolution of the soul. The world reflects your inner peace. The outer world is not a test, it's a reflection. When you find peace inside, the world stops arguing with you. The people who used to trigger you start teaching you. The chaos that once consumed you becomes choreography. Even waiting becomes sacred, a lesson in trust. You stop seeing yourself as separate from life and start realizing you are life, an expression of consciousness exploring itself. From this space, even the smallest things feel miraculous. A breeze, a conversation, a moment of eye contact. Everything becomes a mirror reminding you, you are part of this, you belong. That's what awakening really is, belonging without needing permission. The stillness of mastery. There's a misconception that mastery looks like control, but Jung knew it looks like stillness. Stillness doesn't mean nothing happens. It means nothing shakes your center. You no longer need to prove your peace, you just radiate it. And people can feel it, in the way you listen, in the way you walk into a room, in the way you hold space without saying a word. That is true influence, not persuasion, but presence. Because your energy speaks louder than your beliefs. When you embody what you've learned, you stop teaching with your mouth and start teaching with your life. The mirror closes. Maybe now you understand. This wasn't just a video, it was a mirror, a reflection of something you already knew but had forgotten. You were never here to find meaning. You were here to remember meaning. And meaning was never out there. It was in you, quietly waiting to be recognized. So take one last look inward. Notice the silence inside. That's not emptiness. That's your essence. The untouched, unbreakable awareness that's been with you through every storm, through every awakening, through every lifetime. And in that awareness, There's no rush, no destination, only presence, only this. She was in forward. As this journey closes, something new begins. Not another chase, not another phase of self-improvement, but the next layer of embodiment, the practice of living your peace out loud. When you walk outside after this, the world will look the same, but you'll see it differently. Because the eyes through which you see have changed. You'll notice small miracles, the way sunlight moves across the floor, the quiet dignity in ordinary faces, the subtle intelligence of existence unfolding perfectly on its own. And when old fears arise, as they will, you won't collapse into them. You'll recognize them as memories, echoes of an identity you no longer inhabit. You'll breathe, smile, and whisper, "I remember." Final reflection. Carl Jung's work was never about becoming superhuman. It was about becoming deeply, radically human. He taught that our wholeness doesn't come from escaping the shadow, but from including it. That enlightenment is not light without darkness, but light that understands darkness. And that real awakening is not transcendence. It's intimacy with life in all its contradictions. So if you take only one truth with you, let it be this. You don't need to manifest a better version of yourself. You just need to remember who you already are. Because when you remember, you stop chasing, you stop proving, you stop pleading with the universe to make you whole, and you simply begin to live as wholeness itself. That's not the end. That's the beginning. Epilogue, the breath of return. Breathe in. You've come home. This peace you feel, it's not fragile, it's eternal. It's the same peace that guided every mystic, every poet, every seeker who ever turned inward. You are part of that lineage now. You are the continuation of that remembering. So carry it forward, in your words, in your silence, in your love. Because in a world addicted to noise, your stillness is medicine. And in a culture obsessed with more, your presence is rebellion. Never forget, you are not manifesting, you are remembering. And remembrance is the real miracle.